Hi all, my name is Orla. This channel is about reading short stories for children and adults who are interested. In this one, I'm going to read another one from Irish Myths and Legends. Really great little book. Stories retold by Joe Potter, illustrated by Erin Brown. Okay. And this story is going to be called The King with the Donkey Ears. This is a good one. Many years ago, there lived a king named Larry Longshock. Larry Longshock was powerful and was feared throughout the land. He had miles upon miles of land. He had castles and mansions, whole towns and villages. He had gold and riches that one could only dream of. But he also had a secret, a most embarrassing secret that he would rather die than people discover. The king had huge ears. In fact, they were exactly like those of a donkey. They were long and grey and hairy, and they protruded right over the top of his head. Look at him. The king with the donkey ears. Mad. To hide them, the king always had a very special haircut, styled just so that the ears could not be seen. Once a year he sent out for a barber. After the barber had cut his hair, the king had him immediately put to death, so he could never reveal his terrible secret. As the years went on, though, people began to notice the disappearances of all the barbers. In the end, there were very few barbers left in Ireland. If the king's messenger arrived at your house and demanded you cut his hair, why, you'd never be seen again. As a consequence, everyone's hair grew very long and shaggy. However, some people are destined to become this or that despite the danger. In Longshock's kingdom, there lived a young man named Donal, whose passion was cutting hair. Donal's mother lived in constant fear for her only son. She issued dire warning after dire warning, but Donal was not deterred. Nothing was going to stop him from being a barber. The king could send for you right this moment, Donal, and then you'd be gone forever, said Donal's mother one night. Nonsense, mother, he said, laughing. It's just an old wives' tale. Why on earth would the king kill his barbers? If it's because we're not doing a good enough job, then I'm the best barber in the land. Oh, my poor son, I'd even prefer you to be a knight. It would be safer than being a barber. Just then there was a knock at the door. Donal's mother looked through the window and clutched her heart. That's Donal. He's cutting hair. It's the king's messenger. Hide! Donal ignored her and opened the door with a cheery smile to let the man in. I come on behalf of King Larry Longshock, said the man importantly. Madame, I've come to bring your son before the king. He has a very special job for him to perform. I'm sure you realise what an honour this is. We will leave immediately. Donal's mother wailed and tried to grab hold of her son. Please don't go, Donal, please. I have to, mother. It's the king's orders. Although it broke Donal's heart to do it, he had to leave his mother weeping on the floor as the messenger took him away. But Donal's mother was not about to give up yet. As soon as they were gone, she stopped crying and jumped on her horse. She rode straight to the castle as fast as she could and pleaded her case before the king. Please, my king, my son is all that I have in this world. I'm getting old, and if you kill him, there will be no one left to care for me. He's a good boy and a wonderful son. I beg you, spare him." The king was not a nice man. In fact, he was downright evil. But Donal's mother reminded him of his own mother, and he felt rather sorry for her. He thought long and hard before he answered. "I will spare your son's life on one condition. He must promise to never utter a word of anything he sees in this castle, not to any living person. If he can make this pledge and stay true to it, his life will be spared." The next day Donal was called into the king's chambers. The king ordered all of his men out until it was just him and Donal. "I have spoken to your mother," said the king. "Yes, my king, I promise. I will not utter a word of anything I see in this castle, not to any living person." "Promise?" asked the king. Donal nodded in fright. "All right then," said the king, taking off his crown and shaking out his hair. The huge donkey ears were revealed, and Donal gasped. The king eyed Donal angrily, and Donal quickly set about cutting his hair. Snip, 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 snip. Whatever Donal thought he might see, it wasn't a pair of donkey ears. He was careful not to cut the ears, but he did the job as quickly as possible, then raced out of the king's chambers. He ran all the way home with his mouth clammed tight and ignored anyone who tried to talk to him. Donal's mother was delighted to see her son. "Donal," she cried, hugging her son. "You're alive, you're alive. So it went all right with the king then?" Donal didn't dare open his mouth, but just nodded and went straight to bed. For 3 days he spoke to no one and stayed shut up in his room. Donal's mother knew something was wrong with her son, but she didn't dare question him further. Although she was very relieved to have her son back, he was never quite the same again. He slept little and ate less. He also hardly spoke and seldom wanted to cut people's hair anymore. After months and months of this, Donal's mother decided to take him to a druid to see if he could help, but the druid took one look at Donal and sighed. "I cannot help him. He is holding on to a secret deep inside, and he will not improve until he lets it go." "What do you mean, O wise druid?" Donal's mother asked. "He must tell someone the secret," replied the druid, "otherwise it will eat him up from the inside." "Alas, he cannot reveal the secret he carries to anyone. The secret belongs to the king, and he has vowed never to speak a word of it, not to any living person." The wise druid meditated for a while. "I have a solution to the boy's problem. He must go into the forest and find a tree to tell. He can whisper the secret to the leaves. That way no other soul will hear, and he will not have broken his promise. For a tree is not a living person." Donal followed the druid's advice and went to the forest at once. When he arrived, he walked deep into the trees to make sure no one could overhear him. Right at the heart of the forest, he found a beautiful willow tree by a stream. He sat on the bank, and the willow's leaves swayed in front of his face. Donal leaned in very close and began to whisper his secret. With every word, it felt as though poison was being siphoned out of him. The weight lifted and lifted until it was gone, and Donal felt quite himself again. That afternoon the willow tree had another visitor. A musician from the king's castle had broken his harp and was in need of a replacement. He searched the land but could not find a harp with the perfect sound. In the end, he decided the only solution was... That's Donald talking to the tree. Very cute. The only solution was to make his own, so he went into the forest to find some wood. As he was the finest player in the land, he decided only the finest wood would do for his harp. He searched for hours in the forest, and when he came across the willow, he saw that it was perfect. He chopped off a branch and fashioned his new harp that very night. The harpist was delighted when he finished. The harp was his most beautiful creation. He ran off to the great hall to play for the king immediately. There was a great many people in the hall that evening. There were chieftains and ladies, princes and druids, and a great many common folk besides. "Music!" the king cried when the harpist entered. "Excellent!" The harpist set to play at once. He struck his fingers against the strings. That's the harpist. Ooh, he's gonna start playing. Now wise as Donald's Druid was, he'd not consider that while a tree is no living person, it is still a living thing. The secret blossomed through the wood, and as the musician played, the harp emitted its own song. Strange music filled the hall. The king has donkey ears. The king has terrible fears. The king, you should all know, on top of his head they do grow. Long and grey and furry too. This is the secret he keeps from you. Longshock jumped up from his throne and ran at the harpist in a furious rage. He tried to wrestle the harp out of the musician's hand, and in the commotion his crown went flying off his head. The king fell backwards and his donkey ears were revealed. Silence filled the hall. Everyone could see the ears quite plainly. The king looked around at everyone's shocked faces, and suddenly he began to laugh. The people laughed too, and the harpist helped him up. "Don't worry, my lord. No one cares about your donkey ears." As the evening wore on, the king saw that the harpist was right. Nobody seemed to take much notice of his ears. The secret was out, and there was no point trying to keep it any more. The king felt happier and calmer than he ever had before. After that day, the kingdom too was a happier place, especially for barbers. Thanks to Donald, they would never be in danger again. And that's the moment, the big moment. Look. There we go. The end. That was a lovely story. Okay. Hope you enjoyed that. Good evening. Till the next one.